Hardly unexpected. I gritted my teeth with such intensity that a dull pain radiated through my jaw. I ought to have anticipated this, yet no amount of preparation could have shielded me from the surge of fury overwhelming me. The last time I laid eyes on Olivia was that fateful night when I discovered her entwined with my husband Daniel in his car, her laughter ringing out in the frigid air, while his voice, icy and detached, delivered the words that shattered my world. "It's over, Hannah." After 3 long years, she had returned. This time, she had a desire. The sole reason I found myself in this familiar setting, facing the 2 individuals who had shattered my existence, was due to my father. When he called me 2 nights ago, his voice bore a heaviness that disturbed me. "A family gathering is on the agenda. Olivia and Daniel are set to attend." I almost let my phone slip from my grasp. After all that had transpired? After they had brought me to shame, flaunted their relationship across social media, and left my mother alone in her last days? "It holds great significance, Hannah," my father stated with conviction. "I require your presence." There I sat, clutching the chair's arms to maintain my composure, as Olivia and Daniel relaxed as if they were right at home. My father occupied the head of the room, his presence unwavering as always, yet there was an unmistakable shift in him today. There's an unsettling tranquility. Daniel cast a fleeting look at his watch, a sense of ennui washing over him. "Joseph, let's cut to the chase. I take it this pertains to inheritance?" I nearly let out a derisive laugh. Naturally, that's the reason for their presence. They believed my father was prepared to distribute his fortune, and they were eager for their portion. Olivia had always been captivated by wealth, perpetually pursuing opulence, constantly seeking the next chance to enhance her status. And what about Daniel? He had expertly assumed the role of the ideal, devoted husband, but only as long as it served his interests. Until it ceased to be. My father took a deep breath, then rose to his feet. "Absolutely, let's cut to the chase." He approached his study desk, retrieving a substantial envelope adorned with a notary seal. He placed it before them. "Before we delve into the topic of inheritance, there's an important matter we must address." A brief shadow of discomfort flitted across Olivia's features, yet she swiftly concealed it behind a nonchalant grin. "Dad, can this possibly wait for a moment? We aim to conclude this promptly. This evening holds some plans for me." My father's gaze held steady. "Ach, I'm aware. You consistently make plans, reminiscent of those you had 3 years back when your mother was hospitalized." The atmosphere thickened with a chilling stillness. My heartbeat throbbed in my ears. Olivia's jaw clenched. "We've already discussed this," she stated with a pointed tone. "I had a lot on my plate." "You attended a gala, Olivia," my father interjected. "As your mother drew her final breaths, you found yourself in a lavish hotel, sipping champagne." Olivia's complexion drained of color. Daniel adjusted his position in the chair. "I really don't understand the need to revisit what has already happened." My father pivoted the computer screen in their direction, selecting a file with a click. The atmosphere was thick, charged with anticipation. The screen flickered to life, revealing the haunting images of security footage from the hospital. The timestamp was unmistakable. "That night marked the end of my mother's life." The video captured the desolate corridor beyond her door, with nurses bustling in and out, while the rhythmic beeping of machines filled the air. Next, another picture emerges. Olivia, adorned in a shimmering gown, drink elegantly held, stands next to Daniel on a rooftop, sharing laughter. I took a deep breath, and even after all this time, the sight of it pierced me like a new blade to the stomach. My father remained silent. He allowed the footage to unfold. Olivia's hand quivered ever so slightly, and for the first time that evening, a hint of unease crossed her features. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice dropping to a softer tone. "For the past 3 years, I've been collecting everything," my father stated, his tone unwavering. "This is only the beginning." Financial documents, health information, invoices from care facilities. "Guess what I discovered, Olivia?" She remained silent. There was no necessity for her to do so. The tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers gripped the fabric of her skirt, made it clear to me that she was already aware of what was about to unfold. "You took from your mother," my father pressed on, his tone now cutting. $5,000 per month. That's the amount I was sending you for her care. However, you didn't settle the payment for the facility, did you?" My breath hitched in my throat. Although I had my suspicions, hearing it spoken aloud sent a shiver down my spine. Olivia parted her lips, only to close them again with a decisive snap. Daniel released a hesitant laugh.
Okay, let's take a moment to relax.
This is all quite intense, yet my father still had more to say.
And you, Daniel? Daniels self-satisfied grin wehfred.
You are a medical professional. You have a grasp of the workings of medical records. Can you explain why my wife's report unexpectedly minimized her condition? My father's tone carried a sense of familiarity, yet there was an underlying firmness to it. What was the reason behind the document indicating her progress, despite the evident lack of improvement?
Daniels lips parted, yet sie längse lingert in the air.
Did you believe I wouldn't discover the truth?
My Vater inquired softly. The stillness lingered.
The flames danced and flickered in the hearth. The snow continued to fall, each thick flake accumulating on the windowsill, creating a serene blanket of white outside.
I led out a slow breath.
For 3 years, I bore the burden of betrayal, of sorrow, of lingering questions that remained unanswered. As I sit here in this room, it dawns on me that the truth has always remained intact. My father had been observing. He had been anticipating. And tonight, he was serving the judgment. I glanced at Olivia, then shifted my gaze to Daniel. Their expressions faltered, the facade beginning to fracture. For the first time since that dreadful night in the parking lot, I sensed a change stirring within me. I was no longer the fragile, forsaken figure they once knew. I didn't come here to endure pain. I came to witness their descent. I ought to have anticipated it. Reflecting on the past, the indicators were all around me, subtle fissures emerging just below the surface, hushed alerts I overlooked because I had faith in love, in the institution of marriage, in the concept of family. Yet, treachery does not come with a loud warning. It seeps in like a gradual toxin, overlooked until the moment has passed. As I sat opposite Olivia and Daniel in my father's living room, their expressions gradually losing their assurance with each revelation, I sensed the memories surging back to the surface. I haven't always been this tough. I didn't always embody this woman who gazes at them with sheer disdain. 3 years ago, I was a different person, one who still held on to hope. During my 2nd year as a nurse, I encountered Daniel Carter at St. Mary's Hospital. He was in his residency, all sharp edges and quiet ambition, a figure who moved through the halls as if he had already etched his name in history. He possessed a captivating aura, one that compelled people to glance his way, one that caused nurses to pause for just a moment longer when he shared his words. And in some way, he became aware of my presence. It began with subtle instances, a fleeting look shared in the break room, a suggestion to share a cup of coffee, and the playful banter of inside jokes during extended shifts. I convinced myself that I wasn't falling for him, yet his gaze made me feel as though I was the sole focus in the room. On the evening he extended the invitation, the rain was falling steadily. We lingered outside the hospital, the edges of his white coat damp, his eyes glimmering beneath the streetlights. "Hannah," he murmured, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, "allow me the pleasure of taking you to dinner, just once."
If you don't enjoy yourself, I won't bring it up again.
I chuckled, yet my heart was already whispering its agreement. One dinner blossomed into a series of delightful gatherings. Evenings spent in dimly lit eateries, leisurely weekends by the water's edge, soft-spoken exchanges beneath the glow of urban illumination. He once told me, fingers gently brushing against my wrist, that he had never encountered anyone quite like me.
You are the woman I have longed for.
I had faith in him. A year later, in Harvard Square, the autumn wind danced with red and gold leaves swirling around us. A velvet box held a diamond ring, and the weight of his words sank deep into my bones.
Hannah, will you marry me? Be my eternal companion.
I agreed. Oh, how naive I was. The ceremony was truly enchanting. As my father escorted me down the aisle, my mother shed tears, and Olivia, adorned in a delicate pale blue dress, stood by my side, her smile radiating joy for my moment. Yet, a memory surfaces, one I didn't ponder at the time. That day, as I slipped into my wedding dress, Olivia leaned in close and whispered, "Are you certain about this?"
Tu vet so me ohne like Daniel?
I chuckled, dismissing it as just another one of her typical remarks. Olivia had always stood apart from me, more statuesque, more flamboyant, fixated on prestige and riches. She possessed an undeniable allure that captivated everyone as she stepped into a room, reveling in the luxury of designer handbags and lavish getaways. We were complete opposites in every aspect, yet we remained sisters. Despite her moments of selfishness and arrogance, I never imagined she would cause me this kind of pain. Initially, the indications that something was amiss were subtle. Daniel began arriving home later than usual. He pointed fingers at the hospital, the relentless hours, the weight of expectations that came with being an emerging talent in cardiology. I had faith in him. Then arrived the understated critiques. Perhaps we ought to dine out more often. Olivia has an uncanny ability to discover the finest spots. Perhaps consider elevating your outfit a bit. Olivia possesses an exceptional sense of style. It would be wise to seek her guidance. Olivia lingered in conversations, her name slipping in like an unexpected visitor. Nevertheless, I chose to overlook it. Then my mother fell ill. Initially, it was a gradual onset, the weariness, the throbbing joints, the subtle flinch accompanying each movement. The doctor diagnosed rheumatoid arthritis, yet I sensed it was something deeper. I dedicated all my spare time to looking after her. I dedicated long hours at the hospital, often staying by her side through the night, ensuring her comfort, assisting with meals, and helping her sit up when the pain became overwhelming. Daniel hardly paid attention. "You're frequently at the hospital, Hannah." His tone became more cutting.
What about Müsif?
"What is the status of our marriage?" "She is my mother, Daniel. She doesn't fall under your obligations. That's the purpose of the funds. Admit her to a care center." I loathed him for uttering those words, yet I despised myself even more for the actions I took afterward. I allowed Olivia to assist. One day, she nonchalantly suggested that she could take care of the payments. "I'll handle it, Hannah. You're accomplishing a great deal already. Is Dad sending money for her care, then? I will ensure it reaches its intended destination." I placed my trust in her. I ought not to have. On that fateful night, the chill in the air was piercing. After completing an overtime shift, I found myself utterly drained, fueled only by caffeine and a heavy heart. My mother's health had deteriorated. All day long, I lingered by her side, murmuring comforts that I questioned even as they left my lips. "It's all right, Mom. I have arrived. I will always be present." Her grip on my hand was faint, her eyes shimmering with a distant gaze. "Is that you, Hannah? I apologize." At that moment, her words were lost on me. It became clear to me later, as I stood in the hospital parking lot that night, I caught sight of them. Daniel.
Olivia. United.
Her legs lay gracefully over his lap, his hands resting gently on her waist, their laughter ringing out, cutting through the crisp winter air. The manner in which he caressed her, reminiscent of how he once caressed me, sent a wave of unease through my gut. In that instant, I found myself frozen in place. I stood frozen, my breath creating clouds in the chill, my heart pounding fiercely within my chest. At that moment, Olivia's gaze fell upon me. And she chuckled softly. "Oh my goodness, have we been discovered?" She chuckled, giving Daniel a gentle nudge. He showed no sign of remorse whatsoever. "It's finished, Hannah," he stated, his tone emotionless. "Let's keep this straightforward." Intense. It felt as though he had torn my heart from my chest and presented it to my sister. The details blur in my mind, but I can still feel the bitter taste of bile rising in my throat, the tremor in my hands, and the sharp sound of Olivia's heels echoing as she strode by, treating me as if I were invisible. As if I had never held significance. Now, seated opposite them in my father's home, I observed Olivia's confidence begin to falter. The reality had been revealed. For 3 years, she and Daniel had reveled in opulence, squandering the funds intended for my mother's care, hosting extravagant gatherings, and showcasing their seemingly flawless existence. Now their seemingly flawless existence was disintegrating, and I was poised to witness its fiery demise. On the day my mother passed away, I found myself alone by her side. Only me, no Olivia, no Daniel. I positioned myself next to her bedside, holding her delicate hand, observing the gradual, irregular movement of her chest. The relentless beeping of the monitors created a harsh cadence, each sound signifying another fleeting second. The clinical atmosphere of the hospital was permeated by the sharp scent of antiseptic, mingling with the cold, artificial breeze of the air conditioning. Yet my attention was solely drawn to her face, the way her once vibrant features had become gaunt, the marks on her skin from endless foredrips, the weariness carved into each delicate breath. She was losing her grip. I had a feeling about that. Mom, I'm here, I murmured, my voice strained from countless sleepless nights. Her fingers danced gently in my grasp, and her lips opened slightly.
Asoft brit es caps.
Just a faint murmur. Hannah. I leaned closer, eager to grasp her every word. I apologize. A sudden jolt of agony pierced my chest. What are you apologizing for? I inquired, my voice trembling. Her eyelids fluttered, yet words eluded her. Hot tears streamed down my face. I wished to convey to her that she owed no apologies, that it was she who had been wronged, not I. That Olivia, the daughter she had once held close, the little girl she had stood up to school bullies for, the woman she had endeavored to love without reservation, was the one who had let her down. That Daniel, the one she had placed her trust in regarding my future, had cast me aside the instant it suited him. Yet, I found myself unable to express any of it, for what significance did it hold at this point? She was fading away. She was undertaking it all by herself. I gripped her hand firmly, resting my forehead against her delicate fingers. It's all right, Mom. I have arrived. I will always be present. Even if nobody else was. The machines emitted another series of beeps.
Prolonged. Lingering sounds.
A straight line. The nurse hurried in, her expression meticulously crafted in the manner that healthcare professionals master over time. Yet, deep down, I had already sensed her absence. The service was intimate, subdued. My father and I stood together, observing as the casket descended into the earth. A handful of relatives whispered their sympathies. Longtime family friends embraced me warmly. Yet, everything seemed to lack authenticity. The coolness of autumn enveloped the surroundings, infused with the earthy aroma of decaying leaves and moist soil. Yet, the only scent that enveloped me was the haunting fragrance my mother once adorned. Aunt Olivia was absent. Daniel was not either. They lacked the basic courtesy to be present. On that very day, Olivia shared a photo. A flawlessly composed image, captured atop the rooftop of an upscale dining establishment. With a martini elegantly cradled in her hand, the city skyline sparkles in the background. What about the caption? Fresh starts. My mother lay beneath the earth, while Olivia reveled in joy. Something within me broke. For months, even years, I found myself grappling with the need to understand what had transpired. Struggling to comprehend how my own sister could turn against me so effortlessly. How the man I had cherished could cast me aside as if I were insignificant. However, this was an act of extreme self-centeredness. This was an act of cruelty. In the weeks following the funeral, I steered clear of my phone. Steered clear of browsing through the images Olivia shared from her lavish getaways. The lavish presents Daniel purchased for her. The overly sentimental captions about how everything in life unfolds just as it should. They wished for me to witness. They aimed to convey just how insignificant they considered me. How effortlessly they had advanced while I was left to gather the fragments. Yet, they had misjudged my capabilities. Because I was determined not to falter. This time, no. The initial moment I sensed that something was amiss was during my visit to the care facility to settle my mother's outstanding medical bills. I entered the administrator's office, gripping the paperwork my father had requested I take care of, still feeling the weight of my sorrow. The woman seated at the desk, a warm older lady with soft eyes, furrowed her brow a bit while perusing the files. I regret to inform you, Ms. Carter, that these bills have remained unpaid for several months now. I blinked. Excuse me? She pushed the papers in my direction, indicating the extensive list of overdue notices. A significant sum of money. 3 months of providing care without compensation. That simply cannot be done, I stated with deliberate calm. Every month, my father would send money to Olivia to take care of this. The administrator paused, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Unfortunately, it never arrived. A chilling unease took root in my gut. Olivia had seized the funds. Throughout the nights, I remained by my mother's side. As I balanced long shifts with the tasks of feeding her, dressing her, and comforting her through her tears of pain, Olivia had been stashing away the funds intended for her care, indulging in a designer wardrobe, lavish vacations, and crafting her ideal life with Daniel. I clutched the edge of the desk, my knuckles paling to a ghostly white. Are there any records of the payments available? Absolutely. The administrator printed the financial records, and as I examined the figures, the reality struck me hard. like a brick to the chest. Each month, the funds my father sent were funneled into Olivia's personal account. I experienced a wave of nausea. In that instant, air seemed to escape me.
My mind was blank.
Then I recalled my mother's delicate fingers clasping mine. Her soft murmur. I apologize. She was aware. Perhaps not all, but certainly a sufficient amount. It was sufficient to understand that the daughter she had stood by for so long had ultimately turned her back on her. I burst out of the office, my sight clouded by rage. That night, slumber eluded me. I found myself in my apartment, gazing at my phone, my fingers poised above Olivia's number. I felt the urge to reach out, to unleash my emotions, yet I held back. Instead, I reached for my phone and dialed my father, and for the first time in years, there was no hint of surprise in his voice. I understand, he replied softly. I've been aware of this for some time now. I took a deep breath. So what held you back from speaking up?
A Moment of Stillness.
Subsequently, as I was collecting evidence. And now, the moment has arrived. His voice exuded a sense of tranquility and assurance. The voice belonged to a man who had devoted years to biding his time, anticipating the perfect moment to make his move.
Return home, Hannah.
A family gathering is on the agenda. I gazed across the living room, observing my father as he let the pile of financial records fall onto the table before Olivia. She recoiled at the sight of them. This is impossible, she muttered, her hands trembling as she flipped through the papers. Daniel sat rigidly beside her, his jaw locked in a tense grip that seemed almost agonizing. Every dollar intended for your mother's care was taken by you, my father stated, his tone icy. You allowed her to endure pain while you indulged in vacations, parties, and who knows what else. Olivia parted her lips, yet silence enveloped her. For the first time since this all began, she found herself at a loss for words. As I observed her face transform with the understanding that she had exhausted all her escape routes, a weight settled profoundly in my chest. This was more than mere retribution. This was retribution. The story was far from finished. The stillness lingered, heavy and oppressive. The only sound was the crackling of the fireplace and the gentle rustle of paper as Olivia's trembling hands turned the pages of the damning documents my father had just placed before her. Her impeccably polished nails, a rich shade of crimson, gripped the edges of the financial statements as if she could obliterate the truth with sheer determination. Daniel sat next to her, his body rigid, his jaw locked in a way that made me worry his teeth would shatter. He wasn't focused on the documents. His gaze was fixed on my father, on me, on the tightening noose that was slowly unraveling around their throats. I ought to have experienced a sense of fulfillment, to have been immersed in this moment, the long-anticipated resolution, yet all I felt was a chilling emptiness. Chilled by years of treachery, burdened by the empty pain of neglect, and struck by the understanding that no amount of evidence we presented, no matter how carefully my father compiled it, would ever allow Olivia and Daniel to grasp the depth of my experience. They would remain oblivious to the feeling of being cast aside like something no longer needed, untouched by the crushing solitude of witnessing a beloved one fade away while those meant to offer support turned a blind eye. Yet, for the first time in 3 years, I possessed something they could never grasp. Strength. My father leaned in, his expression unsettlingly composed.
3 years, Olivia.
3 years you've been taking from me, from your own mother. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Olivia released a quick breath, then closed the folder with a decisive motion. You don't understand, she said, her voice delicate yet laced with a fierce determination. It wasn't like that. I let out a laugh, the sound grating even to my own ears. It wasn't like that, I insisted. The care facility was sending overdue notices while you were busy sharing photos of yourself sipping champagne on yachts. Olivia's lips formed a tight line as my father continued, his voice laced with a chilling softness. Tell me, Olivia, where exactly did the $5,000 a month I sent you go? Clearly, it certainly didn't contribute to your mother's medical expenses. She was left with nothing. For the first time, Olivia Carter, the woman who could effortlessly talk her way out of a speeding ticket, who could turn any circumstance to her favor, found herself utterly speechless. Yet, Daniel was not. She mentioned that she was managing it, he replied swiftly, his tone strained and protective, his typical confidence faltering, giving way to a sense of urgency. I was unaware.
Stop, I interrupted, my tone itzy.
Don't you even think about sitting there and pretending you weren't involved in all of this. You were a physician, fully aware of her condition, understanding that she required constant care. Daniel's demeanor shifted to one of shadow and intensity. I never laid a finger on that money, Hannah. That doesn't absolve you of guilt. His nostrils flared. I wasn't the one accountable for your mother.
So meeting wie tin brok. I leaped up, the chair dragging across the wooden floor.
No, certainly not. You were preoccupied with my sister instead. A fleeting shadow crossed his features. Perhaps it was shame? Yet it vanished in a heartbeat, concealed under the weight of self-protection. That's enough, my father said with a stern tone. His voice remained calm, yet it sliced through the tension with precision. I drew in a trembling breath and settled back into my seat, compelling my hands to relax. My father redirected his attention to Olivia. He leaned in, a glint of determination in his eyes, and said, "Let me tell you how this is going to unfold," as he slid another envelope across the table.
This is my will. Olivia's fingers danced with anticipation.
It was revised, he continued. All my assets, every dollar, and every piece of property I possess, it's all destined for Hannah.
Olivias lips parted ever so slichtly, and Daniel felt a sudden tension in the air.
And as for you too, my father's gaze was unyielding. You will receive nothing.
Olivia sprang up, her chair almost tipping over.
You can't do that, she hissed. That is against the law. I possess rights to an inheritance. My father arched an eyebrow. Do you? Do you really believe you can take this to court? He inquired, his tone chillingly subdued.
Prosit, I challenge you.
For I possess something that eludes you. He delved into his pocket and retrieved a USB drive.
Daniel's Adam's apple moved up and down.
This, my father remarked, lifting it high, holds all that is essential. Financial documents, bank transactions, images of Olivia's expenditures, duplicates of deceptive medical reports, surveillance footage from the day your mother passed away while you both were at a luxury hotel. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating, as if all the air had been drained away. If either of you even consider challenging this, my father continued, I will take it upon myself to guarantee that every last piece of evidence is submitted to the authorities. And allow me to clarify, this goes beyond mere inheritance fraud. His gaze turned towards Daniel. The topic revolves around the issue of medical malpractice. Daniel's face became pale. You falsified reports, my father said, his voice laced with contempt. He shook his head, expressing disbelief at how my wife's condition was minimized, especially coming from someone employed at a hospital that values integrity. Do you believe they will keep you safe, Daniel?
Do you believe your profession will endure this challenge?
Daniel's hands clenched into tight fists, yet he remained silent.
Olivia trembled.
Not with fury, but with a different emotion.
A sensation akin to trepidation.
I let out a slow breath, sensing the heaviness of it all bearing down on my chest. For years, I pondered whether they would ultimately confront the repercussions of their actions, if they would ever experience even a sliver of the anguish they had caused. As I observed their gradual disintegration, clarity washed over me. Yet, it remained insufficient, for regardless of the circumstances, my mother was still absent. No measure of justice could restore her, yet it could serve another purpose. It could guarantee that those who deserted her, who allowed her to endure pain in solitude, would never escape without consequences. Olivia stepped back, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps.
Vater, may I ask you for the meeting?
My father observed her intently for a prolonged moment, then slowly shook his head. I've offered you opportunities, he stated. I offered you chances to make the right choices, and you discarded them. He rose, each motion measured and intentional. This conversation is over, he declared, his tone leaving no room for debate.
Olivia's lips quivered.
For the first time since she entered this house, she appeared adrift. Daniel rose suddenly, his fingers clutching the back of his chair. His expression contorted with an unpleasantness, a deep-seated bitterness. This isn't finished, he murmured. My father just smiled gently. Indeed, it is. Daniel cast me a final glance, one brimming with disdain, steeped in unresolved resentment. I faced him directly. For the first time in 3 years, I found myself holding my gaze steady. In silence, Olivia and Daniel made their way to the door, their footsteps resonating on the hardwood floors, gradually fading away until the front door closed with a definitive slam. As soon as they left, the house transformed, becoming lighter, as though a heavy burden had finally been lifted. I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding. My father rested his hand on my shoulder. The task is complete. I nodded, though uncertainty clouded my belief, for betrayal has a way of lingering, refusing to fade away. It permeates your very essence. It transforms you. As I sat there, the gentle crackle of the fire filling the air and my father by my side, a realization dawned on me. I had endured it. For the first time in ages, I found myself in the company of others. I observed their departure. Olivia's heels echoed on the wooden floor, her steps now lacking the confidence, no longer the bold stride of a woman who thought the world would forever yield to her desires. She appeared diminutive, like a specter of the individual she had devoted years to transforming into. Daniel trailed behind her, his shoulders tense, his lips pressed into a firm line. Silence enveloped them. They gently closed the door. They simply vanished. And with them, the burden I had borne for years was lifted. For the first time since that night in the parking lot, the night I discovered them entwined, their laughter echoing my heartbreak, I sensed a profound change stirring within me.
Notretaliation.
Not victory. Exhilaration. At last, I had broken free. Olivia and Daniel's idyllic existence fell apart in an instant. As soon as my father's will was put into effect, they lost it all.
The opulent residence?
Departed. Seized after a prolonged period of missed mortgage payments. What about the cars? Seized. The luxurious getaways, the high-end purses, the meals at top-rated eateries? Finished. What about Daniel? He was not invincible, after all. My father fulfilled his promise. The hospital board received the evidence against him, fraudulent medical records, falsified reports, and clear proof that he had intentionally downplayed my mother's condition. A scandal of that magnitude couldn't simply be ignored. His medical license has been put on hold. His previously bright future as a cardiologist crumbled in an instant. No medical institution was willing to employ a man whose name had become a byword for malpractice and negligence. I learned from a shared contact that he ultimately accepted a position at a modest clinic in a remote town, caring for patients with little more than coughs and sore throats. A stark contrast to the distinguished surgeon he had once imagined himself becoming. Olivia struggled to hold on to the remnants of her dignity, but lacking the financial means and the necessary connections made it increasingly difficult. Her universe contracted. Her affluent companions vanished. The real estate market, once her domain, now turned its back on her. She struggled to resist, attempting to maneuver her way back into the existence she had crafted from deceit and ill-gotten gains, yet the barriers continued to shut her out. No one wished to be linked to a woman who had taken from her own ailing mother. Her reputation was toxic. In an instant, the dazzling duo who once showcased their idyllic existence for all to admire slipped away into the shadows. A year later, I returned to the house where I grew up. It was quite a challenge. Memories surrounded me, the delicate aroma of my mother's cherished perfume still hanging in the closets, the vintage family photographs adorning the staircase, and the garden she once nurtured now choked with weeds. Yet, this house represented something far beyond mere shelter. It was a fragment of her essence. Gradually, I reconstructed. My weekends were devoted to the garden, where I carefully pruned the rose bushes, planted vibrant new flowers, and breathed life back into the cherished space my mother once adored. I transformed the walls, inviting the long-lost light to flood in once more. For the first time in years, I finally permitted myself to take a breath. I had transformed from the woman I was 3 years prior. I wasn't the unsuspecting partner who had clung to fantasies, who had assumed that love alone could ensure someone's fidelity. I had faced the flames, marked by the past, yet I had emerged unscathed. And beyond that, I had triumphed. It wasn't about Olivia and Daniel's defeat, it was about my triumph in regaining what they had sought to seize from me. My self-respect. My power. The path that lies ahead of me. The most recent encounter I had with Olivia was at my mother's resting place. She stood there, clad in black, appearing far less refined than I had ever witnessed her.
The self-assuredness, the boldness.
It had vanished. She appeared more aged, weary. There was silence between us. We stood there in quietude, gazing at the gravestone that held the name of the woman who had brought us into this world. In silence, she pivoted and strode off into the distance. After that, she vanished from my life. I found peace with that. Some endings exist without the need for closure. Certain individuals may not be worthy of forgiveness. Today, I embrace a life crafted through my own efforts. I continue my role at the hospital. Last fall, I received a promotion to head nurse. For the first time in ages, I sense a deep appreciation, a genuine respect, and above all, I feel complete. The past remains, yet it no longer shapes who I am. In reality, it wasn't revenge that liberated me. Healing didn't come from justice. The decision to progress was made. To release the resentment. To cease the pursuit of apologies that are destined to remain elusive. To cease expending my energy on individuals who were never deserving of it from the outset. And what about that? That was the ultimate revenge of all. If presented with the opportunity for justice, would you seize it or opt to turn away? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. I'm eager to hear what you think.